Alright, so the latest film in the Transformers series, The Last Knight, was a bit confusing. It introduced a lot of new material that it tried to cram into its own already dense history, and in the end, a lot of it seems to directly contradict what has come before, and really just doesn't make sense at all. What I soon realized after rewatching the last film as well, is that neither of these recent two films makes any darn sense. So, nerd that I am, I decided to at least look into what's been given to us in the first three films and in the last two films, and how the latter two don't make any sense. Now, some of you might say, why bother? These are pretty dumb films, and whether you enjoy them or not, you'd still probably argue that they're really not worth looking into that much. But, like I said, nerd. Now, I'll be honest, I definitely have issues with all three films. They all suffer from a lot of flaws, but the first three films at least made sense, and in my opinion, actually had some pretty good stories. So let's go ahead and get started with movie one. It's made clear that the Transformers as a race began because of the Allspark. No one knows where it comes from, just that it has the ability to transform any random piece of machinery into a sentient robot, and that's how Cybertron was made, or at least how it was populated. Possession over the Allspark eventually led to war, with the Transformers dividing into factions, Autobots and Decepticons. The war eventually consumed the planet, and the cube was lost to space where it landed on Earth millennia ago. Their world destroyed, the Transformers searched the cosmos for the cube in hopes that it could restore their planet. Megatron was the first to discover the cube was on Earth. He followed it there and crash-landed, eventually being discovered, accidentally, by explorer Archibald Witwicky in 1897. The American government then kept Megatron hidden, and all of our modern technology was reverse-engineered by studying him. Then, in 1913, they also found the Allspark, moved Megatron to the same location, and built Hoover Dam around them. They also formed Sector 7 to further study extraterrestrial life on Earth. Okay, got it. Now, the second film. Revenge of the Fallen states that the early Transformers before the war, and including 7 leaders called Primes, used to travel from planet to planet using special devices to destroy their suns and harvest their energy to create Energon, which is what they run on and what the Allspark created an unlimited supply of. Of course, they only did this with planets devoid of life, until one of them, now known as the Fallen, wanted to make an exception of Earth, and a battle ensued on that planet. I suppose they were already on Earth and had already built the Sun Destroyers and only then discovered the planet had life. I don't really know how all that worked. At any rate, the remaining Primes, I guess, killed themselves to hide a key to the Sun-destroying machine from the Fallen. Yeah, that didn't make sense either. This film wasn't that well written. But the Fallen got away, and apparently this was the beginning of the Decepticons, and he's still portrayed as their leader in modern times. Meanwhile, on Earth, the pyramids were built around the sun-destroying machines. If we count the discovery of Megatron and the Allspark related as they are as one event, then this makes twice that the Transformers have randomly impacted human history, quite coincidentally it would seem. But more on that later. One strange retcon is that this shows that the Fallen was actually the leader of the Decepticons the whole time. The first film leads us to believe that Megatron was their leader and Starscream led the Decepticons for centuries in his absence, but I guess he really only replaced them as second in command, as the Fallen was just sitting up there in his nice little spaceship the whole time. The third film stated that back in the days of the war, after the cube was lost, but before the planet was abandoned, Sentinel Prime, then leader of the Autobots, created this nice little weapon called the Space Bridge to transport anything across the void of space. When he saw that the planet of Cybertron was being laid waste and that winning the war was impossible, he made a secret deal with Megatron, who had discovered the location of the Allspark, and the two were going to rendezvous on Earth. On his way out, Sentinel's ship was damaged and he was believed dead, with Optimus put in charge of the Autobots. Thousands of years later, his ship finally makes it to Earth and crashes on the moon. And these Transformers just can never stick the landing. And of course, it was to reach this UFO that our space race of the 1960s was entirely based around. Now, this is a little bit hard to swallow for two reasons. First of all, the first movie makes it very clear that Megatron is the only non-biological extraterrestrial that Sector 7 has ever found, and the third movie tries to skirt around that by saying that the discovery of the ship on the moon was even higher level clearance, as if no one would want to have their government agency specializing in non-biological extraterrestrials to take a look at these non-biological extraterrestrials. Pretty hard to swallow, but there it is. Secondly, they show that Decepticons have been on Earth for decades, or at least a faction of them, including Soundwave and Laserbeak, have. In fact, they got to the moon right away and removed the pillars from the space bridge, all in the hopes that someday they could revive Sentinel Prime to use it. They then spent years covering up the truth and stopping NASA from creating further moon missions. The film makes it clear that Starscream, who was apparently commanding, or at least second in command, of the Decepticons during Megatron's absence, was totally unaware of this. I don't know why he would be. I guess the Fallen kept it hidden from him. But also, if the Decepticons had that high clearance in American intelligence, even higher than Sector 7, wouldn't they be able to already know where Megatron and the Allspark were? Okay, maybe that's thinking about it too much. By the way, this is now the 4th time that Transformers have touched on human history, but it is still very much connected to Megatron and the Allspark, so I still only count 2 unrelated events. So, wow, that's a lot of stuff that happened to these guys, even before the events of the first movie. Now, just real quickly, let's take a look at the events of the films themselves. First film, Allspark is found here. Everyone comes together to fight over it, but if that didn't work out, Megatron still had plan B and C, right? Sun Destroyer and Sentinel Prime. Well, not really, because 1, he didn't know about the Sun Destroyer until the Fallen told him, and 2, he didn't know Sentinel Prime had made it to Earth. Even after Soundwave and Laserbeak would have told him that, he wouldn't know that there would be any way to revive him until after the Matrix of Leadership was found. Wait, suddenly that actually makes Dark of the Moon a lot cooler. It follows right on the heels of Revenge of the Fallen. Once Megatron learns about the Matrix at the end of that film, he then puts his plan into action to trick the Autobots into reviving Sentinel. Hey, that's pretty neat. Almost makes it feel like these films are thought out ahead of time. Their plan in the film is to transport Cybertron here and use